Vous avez souhaité faire évoluer le Wing Chun et surtout révéler le fait qu'il pouvait s'adapter à tout type de situation. Pouvez-vous nous expliquer ce que vous avez personnellement apporté au Wing Chun et que vous avez étudié avec vos professeurs?
Yeah, well, kind of in line with what I was saying earlier about trying to bring Wing Chun into the modern day and dealing with modern problems. I feel like I'm one of those, like I said, I'm one of those old dinosaurs that learned the old system. And I put my hours in. I trained hard, many hours, buckets of sweat, and I trained and learned everything that I could for many years. I traveled around the world, met the masters, trained with the ones that I felt were perfect for me. And I feel like I'm almost one of the few that deserves to be able to bring new things to the system or to apply the system in a different way. So what I've done to evolve Wing Chun is to figure out ways that it could be used in situations that the founders of the system never knew or never thought about. For example, I work in the prison system. I'm currently the warden, what you guys might call it the governor, but the director of a prison. And I worked my way up. I was once a corrections officer, a guard, and I worked my way up through the system. And now I'm the warden. I'm in charge of the jail. And I say that because in the prison system, there are a lot of situations that come up where self-defense could be very important. It can mean the difference between life and death. In a jail, things can go wrong fast with a mistake, or even sometimes you didn't make a mistake. Sometimes things can just go wrong fast. And you have to be able to react quickly, and you have to be able to deal with the situation. So I created a system of self-defense strictly for prison personnel to deal with the sometimes unique combat situations that happen in prison. A prison fight, yes, when the inmates fight with each other, it can be sort of like a street fight in the sense that they, start with pushing and then they start punching. But when you are coming in, you're not coming in as one of the fighters. You're coming in to try to stop it. But then it can also be that whole thing was a game set up for you to come into the room and then they attack you. So then you could find yourself in a combat situation. In something like that, it's almost guaranteed it's going to be multiple opponents because they're not going to do that to you one-on-one. There's at least two guys pretending to fight to trick you. In any case, there are different situations. There are inmates that are mentally unbalanced and they have to be controlled, but you're not going to beat them up like you would do in a fight in the street. So I created a Wing Chun system specifically for the prisons, for my guys, because as the warden of the prison, I'm responsible for their safety. And if one of my guys gets hurt, it's one of my team. It reflects on me. And it's not that I'm worried about losing my job. I care about those guys and I don't want something bad to happen to them. So I want them to be, able to defend themselves properly. And I thought, being that I've been in Wing Chun for all these years, I could add something to the prison system. So also, one of the evolutions that I think I helped bring forward in Wing Chun is the ground fighting aspect. Now, granted, I had ground fighting in the 1970s, and in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 90s, a lot of people criticized me for doing ground fighting. Oh, you don't need Wing Chun, or Wing Chun doesn't need ground fighting. Well, why not? Well, no one's ever going to knock us down. We're too good on our feet. Well, we know now that that's not true. It doesn't matter how good you are on your feet, you could get knocked down. You look at the top fighters on the planet right now, and guaranteed they all get knocked down off their feet. So you think you're not gonna? And so we know now better because of the combat technology that's evolved, which, by the way, Bruce Lee to me is the person who started mixed martial arts. He's the person that first said we need to mix these things together and thus created Jeet Kune Do. But in any case, what I think is that I was one of the pioneers. I think I was the pioneer, or certainly one of them, because I got so much backlash from the Wing Chun community when I would bring ground fighting techniques in that I thought were important. Even before there was a UFC, I always, you go back to my books in the 80s, and I was saying, ground fighting is an important aspect. And it is, because we know now what, I don't think I knew it as well back then, but I knew from being in fights and seeing fights, you gotta know what to do on the ground. And certainly with MMA now, we know that a lot of guys train in it, and we better be ready to deal with what might happen on the ground, because everybody wants to go there now. So I think that part of the evolution that I've brought to Wing Chun is the ground fighting system. And like I mentioned before, my ranking system that I created, it's different, and not everybody uses it. I don't think anybody but we in CRCA uses it. But I still feel like that's something that I brought forward. Some training methods. I've created certain drills that we do that are standard in CRCA that I created myself. For example, like Yapfuki drill. And oddly, and I'm pretty sure most people would disagree with me on this, but I'm going to say one of the things I'm the most proud of that I created in Wing Chun is my descending count. Because I think that descending count is so helpful to people to learn how to repeat movements cleanly and learn timing and precision, and then to be able to have less and less comfort time before they're forced to do something radically different, the switches and the drills, for example, and less and less and less. And the way it works, partially luck, partially planning, but it works out that if you start out on the left side in, say, Bong Sa position, you end up in the left side in Bong Sa position if you did everything right, or if you messed up twice or 4 times or 6 times. But if you made 6 mistakes, 4 mistakes, or 2 mistakes, you'll end up correct. But it's a way of checking yourself. You got through it, you end up in starting position. And the way that I run, a typical CRCA class, like we're going to be doing this weekend, where we have the advanced line and the less advanced line, and one line moves partners, and we have the open and closed positions that we practice in. It's all very organized. I use Wing Chun within my Wing Chun teaching to economically get the most done in the shortest amount of time with less waste of which side am I on. 2 students are on the left and the other guys are right, and it's all messed up. I created a way to organize and teach Wing Chun in a Wing Chun-like manner, if that makes any sense. Like when I run my barn at home, the way I take care of my horses, I use Wing Chun, and I do that in the way I teach. So I think those are the things that I brought, I think, to the system to evolve it and bring it forward into the modern day. I hope I did well.
So the drill goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Switch. 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Switch. 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Switch. 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Switch. 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Switch. 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Switch. 4, 2, 3, 4. Switch. 3, 2, 3. Switch. 2, 2. Switch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Switch.
Donc on a parlé justement du combat au sol. Pouvez-vous nous parler justement du Biu Jitsu que vous avez créé?
Yes, Biu Jitsu, which is it's a kind of a joke name, or a silly name for a serious thing. I had to come up with something to call my ground fighting system. I mean, there's a Wing Chun term for it. De Ha Guo Sao, which is like crossing hands on the ground, like combat on the ground. It's way too much to say. And I thought, I need to come up with something that's catchy or whatever. So Biu Jitsu, it's dumb, but what it is in Biu Ji, which is the third empty hand form in Wing Chun, that is where ground fighting techniques are introduced, at least in my system, traditionally. We start ground fighting nowadays much sooner than Biu Ji because we have to. But in the old days, that's where ground fighting was introduced. So that is where the Biu, and obviously it's a play on the term Jiu Jitsu. It's no disrespect to Jiu Jitsu, it's just a funny name. But what it is, in Biu Jitsu is my way of fighting on the ground, which is evolved from the old way I used to fight on the ground, and it evolves almost every day. As combat evolves, you know, in MMA, I observe and train with guys and try to come up with techniques for Wing Chun to be able to counter what these guys are doing. Because you don't want the very first time you have to deal with a Kimura arm lock, you don't want it to be against a Jiu-Jitsu black belt. You want to at least have seen it, try to reverse engineer it, figure out how it works, learn how to do it, so that you can possibly defend against it if someone does it to you. Now, if you know, Hoist Gracie or Mika Sapili puts you in forget it, he's going to break your arm. But you're not going to fight Mika, because you're dead if you do. But you're going to fight somebody who maybe learned it and maybe isn't as good as one of those guys, and you're going to be able to recognize it being applied and hopefully defend yourself against it. You have to be able to understand the positions that everybody these days are doing, because in maybe the 1960s, you might encounter a guy that did boxing in the military or wrestling in high school. And you better know how to fight against a guy who knows how to wrestle or box. But nowadays, if you get into a fight out there, chances are pretty good that the guy's gonna, even if he's not trained, he's watched some, you know, MMA stuff, and he's gonna try to take you down, and he thinks he's gonna try to put you in one of those locks he saw the guys do on TV. So he's probably, you know, he may not be very good at it, he may be good at it, but you better know what that is and recognize it being applied, so that you don't end up a victim to it. And so Biu Jitsu is kind of like my answer to the growing culture of MMA and being able to cope with fighting on the ground. But I will say that I'm one of I may be the only one, or certainly the only one, that publicly promoted ground fighting before it became the rage. And I will say that some of the guys that used to criticize me back then and used to publish nasty things about my ground fighting and how it doesn't exist and you don't need it in Wing Chun, suddenly they're all either, well, some of them are disappeared off the set, but some of them are now the Wing Chun ground fighting gurus on the internet. You know, they all have their YouTube and their books and their videos where they're promoting this ground fighting. And these are the guys that used to criticize me, you know? And so I think that, I like to think that I was a little bit ahead of the game back then. And, you know, bravo to them for realizing the need. But I never get any apologies from any of them. So the first example of a Biu Jitsu technique is going to be this technique from a person. What these days they call it, he's in my guard, meaning he's kneeling between my legs and I'm on my back. I used to call that I'm up, he's down, or he's down, I'm up, whatever. But nowadays we use the same terms as everybody else in MMA, so we say the guard. So what I'm going to do is show in this technique how we might use a couple of movements, really super basic movements from Siu Tao, the first form. So, for example, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use something from Yi Ji Kim Yang Ma. I'm going to use this stance, which is the basic stance of Wing Chun. And you go, how in the world could that be used in fighting? And it actually could be used a lot of ways in ground fighting as well as stand-up fighting. But this position is going to be used. I'm also going to use, in this particular case, I'm going to use the knee, Loi Doi Gak Gyok, which is in the dummy form. I'm going to use this. When I open my stance and I do what's called Hoi Ma, I'm going to use that first part of the Hoi Ma sequence, and I could use it a couple of different ways. And so maybe I'll show a couple of variations of how you could use those really super basic movements in a ground fighting situation in what I call Biu Jitsu, right? Which is, like I said, this sort of silly name for a serious way of dealing with ground fighting using Wing Chun, okay? So my first move is going to be, I'm what we call in the guard. He's going to be in my guard. He's going to be kneeling down between my legs here. So what I'm going to do now is show you a position where he could be punching me when I'm on my back. So he could easily punch me in the face, right? You see how easy he could hit me. In fact, just to illustrate how deep a punch he could do, Brice hit the ground next to my head. So you can see that he could punch right through my head at this point. So to deal with this, I'm going to use movement straight from Sum Tao and maybe a little Chung Qu'il, because I'm going to hold my hands in such a way that to try to avoid some of the punches, not to get hit. But what I don't want to do is put my hands out like a normal, like I said, you don't do Sum Tao on the ground. You give this to a guy who's going to break your arm. So I tend to hold my hands the way I do before I do the double Biu Jitsu and Chung Qu'il form. So I have my hands chambered like that. Now that's my first move, is just to kind of keep him from getting through with any of those initial punches. Then the next thing I'm going to do while he's punching me is I'm going to bring my knees up and high and then put them together and then lift myself up. So now he can't reach me. And although this sounds funny, it's actually a factor in combat. You might think he's going to now punch me in the groin. But in the process of lifting my legs, what I did was put myself in a position where I'm protecting my vitals. So at this point, I almost want him to try to punch me there because it's going to help keep his mind off of what I'm doing next. Now, depending on my goal in life, if my goal is to escape, get away, or go help one of my friends, then I have two, different methods, versus if this is a fight between me and him and I want to end it. So, which is my goal? So let's say my goal is to escape. Say a female, she's being assaulted, or you just don't want to fight. At this point, the next thing you might do is you put your foot on his hip, just like when I open my stance in Sum Tao. And I push myself and lift, and I put my other foot on his knee. Now at this point, we're on a really sticky mat. So one of us is going to go when I push, either me or him. But the end result is we're going to be apart. And at that point, I can then stand up and get away, if that's my goal. But I also could have chosen something else. I might have decided, okay, I just want to end this fight. So he's punching me, and I'm going to do this to keep the punch from getting in and lift myself up so he can't hit me. And then what I might decide to do, instead of what I did before, was I might kick him in the face, hook his neck, and then there's my kick. So that's another option, but that's basic Wing Chun 101 that came out of the basic opening stance in the very first move, the very first form. And it carries on from there. So another ground fighting tactic that I would show is from the same guard position that I'm in, but the guy's throwing a hook punch at me instead of a straight punch. So I have a little bit of a different answer, but it would tend to be a good example, I think, of how Biu Jitsu works. For this one, I think I should be this way for them to see it, and you're in the position. So in this case, I've got a guy that's throwing a big hook punch at me, like really wailing that hook, okay? So what I'm going to do to defend that hook is I'm going to use a movement from the Chung Qu'il form, which comes after this guard that I'm already in the form. It goes, shoots out, and then. So what I'm going to do is that, as that hook comes, and I'm going to hit into that hook like this and turn my body. So I'm protecting. So I want you to hit hard. See? You hit as hard as you want. Okay? So it stops it. It deflects it. So that's my first thing, is don't get hit, right? So I immediately do that. Now the next thing I do is I use a move from Sum Tao. When you see me in Sum Tao, I pull Wu Sao back towards myself like that. I'm going to do that move. So after I boom this, I'm going to do that and wrap his arm. Why? To keep him from being able to hit me anymore. You notice I also wrapped his foot. All right? Because what's going to probably happen is he's probably going to now try to hit me with that hand, which I can ward off. I can hit back. But as long as he keeps hitting with that hand, I can keep warding it off. And whenever I decide the time is right, I use the stance from the pull form, which is really wide and low, and I post out. And I can use my free hand and this foot, and I can turn him right over and end up on top. And I'm using Yi Ji Kin Young Ma to hold his body in place. And now I have the prominent position. So that would be a use of Biu Jitsu, because that's all straight out of the forms of Wing Chun, but it's just used in I don't know if it's more creative, but in a different format than we're used to using. So the next one I'll show is maybe the mounted headbutt. So I've got a guy mounted on top of me, he's sitting on me, right? And he's gonna grab my neck and repeatedly headbutt me. So he's got me by the back of the neck and headbutts. You know, that is dangerous. So I'm gonna use movements from Silim Tao Chop Qu'il Biu Ji to get out of this. So as he's smashing me, the first thing I'm gonna do is put my hands in so that if he does hit, I've got a cushion between his head and my hands. I'm not gonna sit here forever and let him keep bashing, but he might get one, maybe even two, before I can wrap around with the movement from the Biu Ji form. Then I'm gonna post out wide with the stance from the pull form. Then I'm gonna fake that I wanna go that way. And I fake so he resists. And when he resists, I go the other way. And now I'm on top. And I can return the favor, headbutting and attacking with my own movements. Right.
Ok Mario, tu es aujourd'hui l'actuel descendant direct de Randy Williams pour la direction de l'école CRCA. Tu as un grand passif avec Randy. Aujourd'hui, on fête les 30 ans de ton école allemande pour l'enseignement du Wing Chun. Et justement, il y a une question que je voudrais te poser qui est importante, c'est pourquoi toi, spécifiquement, tu nommes, lorsque tu nommes ton professeur, Randy Williams, Mr. Creative.
Yes. That's a long story. It began maybe in the 99, 2000, something about this, when SEEF starts to explain a form like Silim Tao. Sometimes we are there and we do this move and we have no idea what this is. And he showed us 5, 6, 7 different ways how to use this move and create just in this moment a new ones. Like he said, okay, we have here a technique where I grab, hit, go through, and oh, look here, I just realized this is a Fuchsau motion. So you just created. Or last week, when we talk about the subject for this weekend, just to have the newest one, this was 20 years before. He said, Mario, I thought about the seminar, I guess I will create a few new drills. What do you mean by this? Yeah, I just create them. It means they are not done? No, I will create it. He's so fast in creating new stuff, it's just unbelievable. Like today, he had an idea what to teach on dummy, and he just create new stuff. And we did 3 different DVDs for ground fighting. He created the name for it, Biu Jitsu. What he done was reverse engineer the Biu Jitsu ground fighting with Wing Chun techniques. Like the rear choke, when we go to the rear choke, we have this motion, this motion, this motion. We all know this move, but if you realize, here's another fuxia. We have the guaijian from the beauty form. Guaijian, fuxia, another fuxia with a squeeze. So we had 3 hours with ground fighting techniques from Jiu-Jitsu or other ground fighting styles made up with Wing Chun techniques. Just by watching what are they doing, and they are the best, the Gracies are the best, watching, okay, I can do the same result at the finish with Wing Chun techniques. That's practice. And he just made it up. 3 hours. So, these are one of the reasons, or 2 or 3 of the reasons why I called him Mr. Creative.
Est-ce que Mario, tu pourrais nous expliquer pourquoi tu as choisi spécifiquement Randy Williams comme étant ton professeur à vie?
Yes, that's a good question. It's kind of hard to find the right teacher. It's easy to find a martial arts school. Every town, every city, every country have enough teachers for everyone. But there's an old saying in Chinese, Gedo Sifu Chun Jing Tong, which means how many Sifus, how many teachers will pass the whole system. Before I met SEEF in 1995, I was already practicing 15 years with 4 different Wing Chun styles. I couldn't finish no one of these systems for different reasons. In any of these styles, the teacher's always good, no question about this. But there's a big but. Many questions aren't answered. Like, why we do this? Okay, just do it, later I will explain. Why do we turn while we kick and stuff? That's not important, just do the move, the answers. Sifu, do you know the moves on the dummy as beginner, no? Yes, of course I know. Please would you show me? I'm curious how it looks like. No, this is just for advanced guys. And the very first seminar with SEEF, he saw my dummy, I had no idea how to use it back in 1995. He saw the dummy and said, okay, can I touch it? Okay, what do you mean by touch it? I'll do the form. What do you mean by doing the form? I will show you my form, see if you like it. And of course, I was like, wow, okay, let's see what happened. And then he goes there and performs all the form. And I was, wow, you are really the first one who showed me everything. What do you mean by this? He said, oh, I'm practicing 15 years Wing Chun, but nobody showed me. Everybody said, you have to wait. Okay, what else do you never saw? Kind of scared. The weapon, the knives? Okay, wait, do you have knives? Yes, I don't know how to use it, but I have it. And he did the Bachan-do form. Anything else? Can I ask for the pole? Oh, sure. Anything else? If you ask me, I would like to see beauty. And he showed everything. And until the first day, I realized this is a totally different world. No secrets, no answers without any questions. And that's why I chose. No matter what, I want you as my teacher.
Une anecdote spécifique avec le SEEF, avec Randy Williams, à raconter, à offrir à ceux qui vont regarder cette vidéo.
Let me think, the best one. We have a few, but yes, I guess the best one still is this. As I already explained, I know SEEF since 1995, so today 30 years. And back in the day, we didn't had cell phones, ChatGPT, Google for Translate. We had that kind of phone, no handies. And I came from the school without learning English. My English is still bad, my English, but at least I can have a conversation like this. But that time it was, my name is Mario Lopez, and Germany come from, something like this. And so we need a translator to make the translation received to come from the United States, Pennsylvania, to Germany, and to have a seminar here. It starts January, February 1995. So I ring, my translator, please come, 8 hours difference, come over, we need to talk with Randy Williams, I want you to translate. He came, I paid him, he talked to SEEF for weeks. Then SEEF came to Germany first time, translator, translate. And this goes maybe, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years. And then one day, and here's the anecdote, he said, Mario, now I've been here a few times. Your surname is Lopez, right? And I said, yes. It sounds Spanish. He said, yes. I was born in Germany, but my parents came from Spain. That means maybe you speak some Spanish? Yes, of course, I'm a Spanish guy. No te lo creo, la puta madre. And he starts talking in Spanish because his mother comes from Spain too. So, and from that moment, for years, we talked in Spanish, and sometimes we do it still today. This is, I guess, one of the best anecdotes with him.
Merci beaucoup Mario, c'est un plaisir de pouvoir t'interroger et d'avoir ton retour sur le SEEF. C'est toi qui es chargé maintenant de l'organisation du CRCA, en tout cas principalement en Europe, et je suis très fier et très heureux que tu puisses être le descendant direct de Randy.
Thank you very much.